There's a certain type of person who just doesn't care about sports. Maybe they never got into it. Perhaps they played in high school and were actually pretty good. But somewhere in their late teens, they just grew out of it and moved on to other interests, other priorities. If you're this person, you know the experience well. Your friends make jokes. Sorry, guy. Non sports people not allowed at the Super Bowl party. You don't have a team. You don't know the standings. And frankly, don't care. Around the water cooler, you can't participate in those Monday morning quarterbacking recaps. There's often an assumption that goes along with not caring about sports. The stereotype is that you're not a team player, that you're antisocial, maybe even selfish or too individualistic. In workplace settings, especially, if you're not enthusiastic about the company softball league or you opt out of those weekend team building retreats, you get labeled. You're not a team player. In corporate culture, that often translates to your work isn't good enough, you're not committed enough, you're somehow deficient. The conventional thinking is that team sports teach collaboration, cooperation, working toward a common goal. If you don't value that, either as a participant or even as a spectator, investing emotionally in a team, maybe you lack those collaborative instincts. Maybe you can't put the group ahead of yourself, but not valuing the rituals of team sports culture doesn't mean you lack collaborative instincts. You can absolutely work toward a common goal, contribute your individual thinking and expertise, articulate exactly what you're doing for the team. You just don't need to perform the social rituals, the weekend retreats, the softball games, to prove it. The same psychological mechanisms that create intense bonding around team sports can also lead to some darker outcomes. Look at what happened in Vancouver in 2011. The Canucks lost the Stanley Cup Finals, and downtown Vancouver erupted. Crowds of people, ordinary people, not criminals or troublemakers, started rioting. They smashed windows at the Bay, looted stores, set cars on fire over a hockey game. Or look at soccer hooliganism across Europe, violent clashes between rival fans that have led to injuries and deaths, riots breaking out after football matches with disturbing regularity. These aren't isolated incidents. They're examples of a well-documented psychological phenomenon. Psychologists call it de-individuation. When people are part of a large group, especially when they're wearing the same jerseys, their faces painted in team colors, all chanting the same chants, they can lose their sense of individual identity and accountability. Research going back decades shows that in crowd situations, particularly emotionally charged ones like sporting events, normal inhibitions decrease. People do things as part of a group that they would never do alone. The individual conscience gets overridden by collective emotion. Social psychologists have specifically studied riots after sporting events and found that intense shared identity combined with high emotional arousal creates ideal conditions for mob behavior. Beyond riots, there's broader research on conformity and group dynamics. Classic studies show how powerful group pressure can be. People will deny the evidence of their own eyes or violate their own moral codes when embedded in a group context and seeking approval. Wearing the same uniform, displaying the same symbols, participating in the same rituals creates a powerful group identity that can override individual judgment. Shared symbols and uniforms can blur personal responsibility and replace it with group identity. That can create belonging, but it can also make people act in ways they wouldn't as individuals. Groups don't just form around what they love, they often bond around what they oppose. Sports fandom isn't only about loving your team, it's about having a rival. That kind of competition shows up in more serious contexts too, where identity is built by defining outsiders. By contrast, people who are comfortable standing apart from the group tend to be more resistant to these pressures because they don't need the group to define who they are or what to think. This isn't an attack on sports fans. Most enjoy the camaraderie without harm. It's simply that independence of thought and resistance to conformity, often found in people uninterested in group sports culture, can be protective traits. There's another way to look at this, and it comes from the Stoics. They were wary of crowds, not because they disliked people, but because they understood how easily individual judgment dissolves inside collective emotion. To them, Moments of mass excitement or outrage weren't harmless, they were tests. Times when reason was most likely to be replaced by contagion. What mattered was inner sovereignty, the ability to keep your values and judgment intact regardless of how loud or unified the crowd became. From that perspective, mass enthusiasm isn't automatically virtuous. A group of people all feeling the same thing at the same time isn't proof of truth or depth, it's just synchronization. Many group rituals, including sports fandom, offer borrowed identity. Your team wins, your team loses. You experience pride, anger, and belonging without personal responsibility or consequence. The Stoics would have seen that as a subtle dependency, outsourcing meaning an emotional regulation to something external. So when someone opts out of those rituals, it doesn't mean they're cold or antisocial. It may simply mean they're less interested in merging their identity with a crowd in order to feel significant. From a Stoic lens, that isn't a flaw, it's restraint. So the next time someone gives you grief for not caring about the big game or skipping the company retreat, consider this. You might be someone who keeps your own judgment instead of getting swept up in collective emotion. You collaborate through real contribution, your work, your ideas, your expertise, not through social performance. Not being into sports culture doesn't mean you can't work with others or that you're antisocial or selfish. It might just mean you're the kind of person who thinks for themselves. In a world where group thinking can lead to everything from post-game violence to serious failures of judgment, that might not be such a bad thing to be.